The story opens with the male narrator, a 24-year-old quietly observant young man, in a setting that feels ordinary yet charged with subtle anticipation. A small, cozy cafe tucked in a quiet corner of the city, or a sunlit bookstore filled with the smell of old pages and warm coffee. He is introspective, noticing the way sunlight catches on dust motes in the air, the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and the soft murmur of distant conversations. These details establish a sensory backdrop that immediately pulls the audience into his world. Enter the older woman, 42, confident and graceful, moving with a calm assurance that contrasts beautifully with his nervous energy. She carries herself with an ease that hints at a life fully lived, yet there is a softness in her eyes that suggests vulnerability she does not often reveal. Their first encounter is almost accidental, a shared glance over a misplaced book, hands brushing lightly while reaching for the same item, or a fleeting collision near the cafe counter. The physical touch is subtle but significant. The warmth of her hand grazing his sends an unexpected jolt through him. A quiet but profound moment that lingers in the mind of both characters. The emotional tone is gentle curiosity and mutual intrigue. He notices details that others might miss. How her laugh reaches her eyes, how she tilts her head slightly when thinking, the way she absent-mindedly tucks a strand of hair behind her ear. She, in turn, senses his sincerity and quiet intelligence, a depth that feels rare in casual encounters. The audience should feel the electric tension of connection without words, the magnetic pull that makes ordinary gestures, like sharing a table or exchanging a smile, feel loaded with meaning. Internal conflict is introduced subtly. He is aware of the age difference and wonders if his attraction is appropriate or fleeting. She feels a flicker of something unexpected, a pull that she isn't entirely ready to name, aware of her own experiences and cautious about letting herself be drawn in too quickly. This hesitation plants the seed for the slow-burn tension that will unfold over the story. The scene closes on a moment of lingering physical and emotional resonance. She leaves the cafe or bookstore, glancing back with a small, unreadable smile, and he remains frozen for a heartbeat, feeling the echo of her presence in the warmth of her brief touch. The sensory details, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air, the soft hum of the cafe, the warmth of her hand on his, linger in the audience's imagination, establishing an emotional connection that promises more. The goal of this keynote is to immerse viewers in the subtle thrill of first contact, blending sensory-rich description with emotional depth. By the end of Part 1, the audience should feel the quiet intensity of a first spark, an encounter that feels ordinary on the surface but charged with emotional significance, setting the stage for the slow, intricate build of romance to come. After the initial encounter, the story deepens, drawing the audience into the quiet, unspoken tension that now hums between the male narrator and the older woman. The setting shifts to a space where both characters can feel slightly more at ease. A late afternoon stroll through a leafy park, the soft hum of city streets from a quiet bench, or a shared workspace filled with muted light and scattered papers. The environment should feel lived in, warm, and familiar, enhancing the intimacy of small gestures and glances. The male narrator begins to notice layers in her personality beyond the immediate impression of grace and confidence. He observes the subtle ways she moves when she's engrossed in thought, how her fingers tap lightly against the table edge, or how her eyes briefly cloud with memory before clearing again. These tiny details hint at a depth of experience and quiet vulnerability that intrigues him further. The audience is invited to see her not as a mysterious ideal, but as a fully human figure, rich with inner life and nuanced emotions. Their interaction remains understated yet charged. Perhaps she asks a casual question, lightly teasing him over a shared opinion about a book or a topic of conversation. He responds with measured thoughtfulness, careful not to overstep, yet his subtle admiration shows through his body language. Leaning slightly forward, shoulders relaxed but eyes intent, a hand brushing over his own hair in a gesture of nervous awareness. She notices, and her own body language softens. A tilt of her head, a slow, thoughtful smile, the way she leans just a fraction closer when he speaks. Every movement is meaningful, conveying attraction without words. The narrative emphasizes emotional intimacy developing quietly. He feels a tentative trust forming as she reveals small pieces of her world, a cherished memory, a passion she pursues alone, a fleeting insecurity she rarely shares. She senses his genuine interest and respect, which contrasts sharply with past encounters in which she felt underestimated or overlooked. These moments of shared vulnerability, short, almost accidental touches of the hand as she gestures, or brief eye contact that lingers longer than necessary, heighten the sense of a slow, deliberate connection forming. Conflict is subtle but palpable. He wrestles internally with the age difference and social perception, wondering if pursuing feelings would be foolish or socially complicated. She too feels the tension of unspoken desire, aware of her own life experiences and cautious about letting herself be swayed too quickly. This hesitation is expressed not through dramatic statements but through nuanced behavior. A pause before answering a question, a hand brushing against her neck, or the quiet sigh she releases when she turns away. The scene closes with a moment of quiet resonance. Perhaps they part ways after their conversation, lingering for a heartbeat at the door or along the path. He catches the faint scent of her perfume, and she glances back with a brief, meaningful smile. That small, lingering contact, the brush of her hand against his arm as she says goodbye, the weight of her gaze, leaves both characters emotionally stirred. The goal of part 2 is to deepen the emotional and sensory connection, illustrating that attraction is not just physical but rooted in shared understanding, subtle gestures, and unspoken tension. The audience should feel the growing pull between them, aware that something meaningful is developing, yet still slow and deliberate, perfectly setting the stage for the tension to escalate in subsequent parts. By this point, the story begins to move from curiosity to subtle emotional dependency. The male narrator and the older woman find themselves spending time together in circumstances that allow for quiet, private interaction. A rainy afternoon in a shared workspace, an evening cooking together in a cozy apartment kitchen, or a long train ride where they're seated side by side. The setting should heighten intimacy naturally, creating opportunities for lingering touches, shared spaces, and observations that feel significant without being forced. The male narrator notices small details that deepen his fascination. How her fingers linger on the edge of a book or utensil, the faint scent of her perfume mixed with the aroma of coffee or rain, the way her gaze softens when she laughs at something small or personal. He begins to appreciate the subtleties of her presence. The rhythm of her breathing when she's focused, the slight tension in her shoulders that relaxes when she feels safe. These sensory cues communicate emotional depth, drawing the audience into his point of view and making every gesture feel meaningful. Their interactions take on a playful yet tender rhythm. He offers assistance in a natural, caring way, handing her a cup of tea, adjusting a book that's precariously balanced, or catching her hand when she stumbles slightly. Each gesture is charged with understated intimacy. Her hand brushing his, their shoulders touching as they move side by side, the warmth of her arm near his. These moments convey romantic tension without words, showing physical affection that is appropriate, emotionally significant, and YouTube safe. At the same time, the story introduces internal conflicts more clearly. The male narrator feels a growing awareness of the age gap and societal perceptions, but these worries are complicated by the undeniable pull he feels toward her. He hesitates to express his feelings directly, fearing misinterpretation or rejection. She too wrestles with her own reservations, memories of past relationships, her desire for independence, and the quiet fear of becoming emotionally vulnerable. These inner struggles are revealed through microbehaviors. A thoughtful pause before speaking, fingers fiddling with a bracelet, a half smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. The audience senses the depth of unspoken emotion, heightening anticipation. The narrative also allows for quiet confessions or shared stories. She might reveal a personal regret or a fleeting dream, and he responds with careful empathy, his hand resting lightly on hers for a moment, creating a bridge of trust and emotional safety. The sensation of her warmth under his fingers, the steadiness of her gaze, and the softness of her voice amplify the intimacy, showing that their connection is not just attraction. It is rooted in emotional resonance and mutual respect. The scene closes on a moment of tender suspension. Perhaps they part after a shared moment, her hand lingering on his arm for an extra heartbeat, or their eyes meeting across a room before she turns away. That fleeting connection leaves a trace of warmth and longing, signaling that the emotional tension is deepening. The goal of part 3 is to solidify the emotional and physical subtleties of the relationship. Touch, gaze, and shared space become conduits for intimacy. The audience should feel the slow but undeniable draw between them, sensing that both characters are on the verge of acknowledging feelings that have been building since the first encounter, while still leaving room for hesitation and suspense. By part 4, the slow burn tension between the male narrator and the older woman begins to reach a subtle emotional peak, where attraction, hesitation, and vulnerability collide. The setting can reflect this intensity: a dimly lit art gallery, a quiet evening walk through a rain-slick street, or a private living room softly lit by a single lamp. Shadows, light, and confined spaces amplify the intimacy of proximity, making every glance, touch, or sigh feel heightened. The male narrator's internal world grows more restless and conflicted. He feels drawn to her warmth and confidence, yet is acutely aware of the age gap and societal expectations. Each brush of her hand or accidental shoulder touch feels charged with unspoken meaning. His observations deepen. How her eyes search his when she's listening, the slight tremor of her fingers when she laughs nervously, or the way she leans in just enough to catch his attention without saying a word. These details invite the audience into his perspective, allowing them to feel both the desire and the restraint that define his experience. The older woman's perspective mirrors this tension. She experiences a quiet pull toward him, a magnetic combination of his sincerity, thoughtfulness, and emotional openness, but is careful not to let it overwhelm her. Her body language is subtle yet telling. She lingers a moment longer when handing him a cup of tea, allows her hand to brush his in passing, or catches his gaze and holds it just a fraction longer than necessary. The slow, deliberate pacing of these gestures keeps the connection intimate without overt declaration, creating a rich, tactile sense of yearning. Dialogue in this part is careful and understated, conveying emotion through pauses, half-smiles, and carefully chosen words. He might make an honest, vulnerable observation about life or longing, prompting her to reveal a personal truth in response. Their conversation flows naturally, yet carries an emotional weight, making the audience keenly aware of the silent attraction simmering beneath each word. This is the point where emotional intimacy peaks, but neither character fully allows themselves to cross the boundary into overt romance. Conflict escalates through external and internal pressures. He might worry about how friends or colleagues perceive their closeness, while she reflects on past experiences that have taught her caution. These concerns are never explicit. Instead, they manifest through hesitation, averted gazes, and small gestures that show both desire and restraint. The audience feels the tension mounting, understanding that the attraction is mutual yet carefully contained. The scene closes with a sensory, emotionally charged moment. Perhaps she steps closer to adjust a coat on his shoulders, their hands touch briefly, or she lets her cheek brush his arm as they move through a doorway. The warmth of that fleeting contact, the heartbeat it triggers, and the quiet pause before she steps away leave both characters, and the audience, breathless with anticipation. The goal of Part 4 is to heighten emotional tension and unspoken desire, making the slow burn romance nearly palpable. The audience should feel the magnetic pull between the characters, the hesitation born of social and personal constraints, and the growing awareness that something meaningful and inevitable is forming between them. This part sets the stage for eventual breakthroughs in emotional honesty and affectionate intimacy in the next sections. Part 5 is the emotional turning point of the story, where hesitation begins to give way to vulnerability and intimacy deepens. The setting encourages privacy and closeness. A quiet evening on a terrace overlooking city lights, a softly lit living room with music playing low in the background, or a secluded cafe booth where conversations feel uninterrupted by the world outside. The environment should amplify the sense of intimacy, allowing gestures, touches, and shared glances to carry emotional weight. The male narrator begins to open up in a way he hasn't before, sharing thoughts and feelings that are raw yet sincere. Perhaps he admits moments of self-doubt, personal regrets, or dreams he has long kept private. His voice may falter at times, revealing nervousness and vulnerability, but the sincerity behind every word draws the older woman closer. She listens with quiet attention, her eyes soft, her body language unconsciously leaning toward him. Elbows resting on the table, hands loosely clasped, or fingers grazing his lightly in reassurance. These micro-moments of touch convey trust and connection far more than words ever could. The older woman, in turn, allows herself to let down protective walls. She might reveal a personal fear, a past heartbreak, or a small longing she has never shared before. The audience witnesses the subtle mutual exchange of vulnerability, the rare intimacy of two people allowing themselves to be truly seen. The male narrator notices the slight tension in her shoulders easing, the warmth in her voice, and the way her gaze lingers just a fraction longer, reinforcing the sense that they are connecting on a profound emotional level. Physical gestures in this part are deliberate, tender, and emotionally resonant. Hands may brush across a tabletop or rest briefly over each other's. Arms might touch lightly as they reach for a shared object, or she may rest her hand on his forearm while emphasizing a point. Every contact is slow, intentional, and charged with unspoken affection, giving the audience a sensory experience of closeness that is romantic but entirely YouTube-safe. These touches carry the weight of unspoken feelings, each one echoing the emotional depth growing between them. Conflict remains, but it is internal and subtle. Both characters wrestle with the implications of crossing boundaries, the societal perception of their age difference, and the fragility of this delicate connection. This tension makes each shared confession and gentle touch feel more significant, keeping the slow burn pace compelling while ensuring the romance feels earned and emotionally believable. The scene closes with a quiet, emotionally resonant moment. Perhaps they linger after the conversation, neither ready to leave. He may catch her hand as she rises to go, or their eyes meet across the table in a long, unspoken acknowledgement of mutual longing. The faint brush of fingers, the warmth of proximity, and the shared silence communicate more than words ever could, leaving both characters, and the audience, with a sense of fulfillment and anticipation. The goal of Part 5 is to bring emotional depth to the forefront, showing that intimacy is not just physical, but profoundly emotional. By now, viewers should feel the slow burn tension blossoming into meaningful connection, sensing that the characters are ready to navigate affection and vulnerability together, setting up the story for the resolution and romantic fulfillment in Parts 6 and 7. By Part 6, the slow burn romance reaches its emotional and sensory peak, where tension gives way to gentle, meaningful affection. The setting reflects this intimacy: a softly lit evening at home, a quiet walk under streetlights, or a cozy corner in a cafe that now feels like their private world. Every environmental detail, from the soft hum of distant traffic to the gentle flicker of candlelight, enhances the emotional resonance of their interactions. The male narrator's awareness of his feelings becomes clearer and more urgent. He notices every subtle gesture of hers: the brush of her hair against her cheek, the warmth of her hand as it rests near his, the way her eyes soften when she speaks his name. These observations are not merely physical. They are emotionally charged, amplifying the sense of intimacy for the audience. He begins to act on his feelings in gentle, thoughtful ways, reaching for small, tender touches that communicate care and desire without words. The older woman, in turn, responds to his attentiveness with quiet acceptance and reciprocation. She allows moments of closeness, her hand lingering near his, a brief touch on his forearm, or leaning slightly into him when they sit side by side. These gestures are deliberate yet unhurried, reflecting the careful navigation of boundaries and the respect that defines their connection. The audience senses that every touch carries emotional weight, each one building the promise of a deeper bond. Dialogue is infused with honesty and emotional depth, allowing them to express feelings that have been building since their first encounter. He may speak of admiration, longing, or the comfort he finds in her presence, while she shares her own recognition of the connection they have formed. Their conversation is interspersed with pauses, lingering glances, and subtle touches, creating a rhythm that mirrors the slow burn tension and reinforces the intimacy of the moment. Conflict is minimal here, but still present in hesitation and careful pacing. Both characters are aware of the significance of these moments and navigate them with caution. This restraint enhances the audience's appreciation of the slow burn dynamic, making each gesture of affection, hand touches, shoulder brushes, shared smiles, feel earned and deeply meaningful. The tension that has been building across the previous parts now resolves in a crescendo of emotional closeness rather than dramatic confrontation. The scene closes with a sensory, emotionally satisfying moment. Perhaps she rests her head briefly against his shoulder. He gently holds her hand as they walk, or they share a long, lingering gaze before parting for the evening. The warmth of proximity, the quiet rhythm of shared breathing, and the subtle weight of affection convey a sense of fulfillment and romantic climax, leaving both characters and the audience enveloped in the depth of their connection. The goal of Part 6 is to culminate the emotional tension into tender, meaningful affection. By now, viewers should feel that the relationship has blossomed fully, built on shared vulnerability, mutual respect, and subtle physical closeness, while still preserving the slow burn pacing that makes the romance compelling. This sets the stage for the final resolution in Part 7, where emotional and relational satisfaction is fully realized. The story reaches its emotional resolution in Part 7, where the slow burn tension, mutual vulnerability, and subtle affection finally converge into a satisfying sense of connection. The setting emphasizes warmth and intimacy: a quiet evening at home with soft lamplight, a serene park under the golden glow of sunset, or a cozy cafe corner that has become their private sanctuary. Every detail, the gentle hum of surroundings, the subtle scent of her perfume mingling with the air, the texture of a shared blanket, or the warmth of a chair pressed close, enhances the emotional resonance of the moment. The male narrator now fully acknowledges his feelings, both internally and in subtle external gestures. He feels the depth of his admiration, desire, and care for the older woman, and it manifests through thoughtful touches. Brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, gently holding her hand, or allowing a comforting arm around her shoulders. These actions are slow, deliberate, and emotionally grounded, conveying the culmination of a romance built on patience, mutual respect, and emotional honesty. The older woman reciprocates, her own barriers softened by trust and shared vulnerability. She allows herself to lean into him, resting her head lightly against his chest, or offering a hand on his arm as a signal of presence and trust. These gestures are significant. They communicate both affection and a profound sense of emotional safety, giving the audience a sensory understanding of intimacy. Her eyes, soft and luminous, reflect relief, joy, and a quiet wonder at the bond they have nurtured together. Dialogue is minimal but loaded with meaning. They exchange words that feel natural, honest, and deeply reflective, acknowledging the journey they've taken, the hesitation they've navigated, and the connection they've built. Pauses, smiles, and laughter punctuate their conversation, each moment reinforcing the depth of emotional intimacy. The audience experiences the sense that nothing is forced. Their closeness is earned and mutually desired, reinforcing the realistic, human tone that makes the story compelling. Physical affection remains tactile and emotionally expressive, staying fully YouTube-safe while resonating with meaning. A lingering touch of fingers, a gentle hand on the back, or a light cheek-to-cheek gesture. These small but potent actions underscore the warmth, trust, and emotional culmination of the romance. Each touch is a testament to the patience and care that have defined their slow burn connection. Conflict is resolved subtly, with both characters at peace with their feelings and the age gap dynamic. Past hesitation, internal doubts, and societal concerns have been acknowledged, understood, and gently set aside in favor of genuine emotional fulfillment. This resolution is quiet but deeply satisfying, emphasizing emotional maturity and the beauty of a romance built on understanding, respect, and trust. The story closes on a sensory and emotional high note. Perhaps they walk together in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, or sit side by side, shoulders touching, sharing the quiet warmth of togetherness. Their smiles, relaxed posture, and lingering glances convey completion, fulfillment, and the promise of continued connection. The audience is left with a sense of romantic and emotional satisfaction, witnessing a relationship that has blossomed slowly, realistically, and beautifully. The goal of Part 7 is to deliver a warm, fully realized conclusion, giving viewers the emotional payoff of a slow-burn romance. The narrative emphasizes mutual respect, meaningful affection, and deep emotional intimacy, leaving the audience both fulfilled and emotionally moved.